Hello.
Just keep this in. This is totally perfect to just start this episode off.
I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Triple Play, that podcast that just capitalizes on a completely unrelated movie. Because this month we watched Troll 2, and the alleged one of Troll 3.
Troll 3, a.k.a. Contamination .7, a.k.a. Crawlers, a.k.a. Creepers. Written by Ed Naha, or Naha, however you pronounce that, Claudio Fragasso, Fabrizio Laurenti, Albert Lawrence, and Daniele Strappa. I think that's a male name,
Whatever.
Just the Italian version of Daniel.
Directed by John Carl Buechler, Claudia Fragasso, and Fabrizio Laurenti and Joe D'Amato.
And released in 1986 and possibly 1989 and 1990.
And 1993.
For both. No, because I got that wrong. Troll 3 was actually released in 90, right? Or was
Troll 3 was slated for a U.S. theatrical release in 1990. Some nonsense went down. We don't really know what happened, but we do know that it was released on home video in 1993. So,
yeah, this is the episode, and I mean, I'm saying this with the early episodes of Triple Play in mind, but I think this is an episode that we, one, didn't do enough homework for, and two, couldn't possibly have done too much more homework for. Maybe
we
a
couldn't
little
have possibly
more.
done any more homework for it.
Maybe a little more.
Unless I watched
been
that
a little.
50-minute documentary on the making of the first Troll.
Exactly.
But I literally could not even find anything about the third movie.
No, there's nothing about the third one.
I couldn't even find the third movie. I searched for every single one of its names.
Same here.
Looking for Troll 3 just brings up Troll 2. Looking for contamination
Looking
points.
for Troll 1 brings up Troll 2.
Looking for contamination .7 brings up
Side note, like, what does that name even mean?
brings up like
it's not .7. Like this is .7. This is dumping .7. It's like the number .7, as in 0.7.
brings up like some nonsense radioactive stuff. Searching the creepers brought up a completely unrelated. Crawlers brought up a completely unrelated movie called The Dwellers.
Oh yeah, there was Cellar Dweller, directed by Buechler as well.
So quite frankly, Troll 3 could have fallen from the sky, and we would be none the wiser.
Well, remember a couple of years ago when we watched Neverending Story, and we were like, yeah, Neverending Story 3 is the worst movie we've ever watched, both for this podcast and in general for me. I think Troll 2 has either topped that, or it's definitely giving it a run for its money. Troll 2 is up there for one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Quite possibly the worst. I would have to go back and rewatch Neverending Story 3, which I don't want to do.
We gotta get through Troll 1 first.
Yeah, we do. I like Troll 1. I'll just come out and say it. I like Troll 1. I do. I like it. I don't think it's great.
I found more reviews of Troll 1 than I found actual behind-the-scenes information about Troll 1.
I think with a slightly different approach, Troll 1 could have been a really, really solid and good movie.
Well, there's one review I read was like, it came out the same year as Back to the Future, which didn't help it, and I was like, it's shoddy production values and crappy script didn't help it, Mr. Reviewer Man.
But I mean, it's also like not really related to Back to the Future. If you would put this up against like Neverending Story, then like, yeah, maybe you could have a point there, but
Yeah.
Which it did came out a year after Neverending Story 1, I think. 2 years.
This is the trilogy to rival Neverending Story. The Neverending Story killer.
Well, the first one has some Neverending Story thematic links, both to the stupid movie version and the book.
Right.
The book that I love and consider one of the top 5 books ever written.
It's all right. It's all right.
Hate the movies, though.
So Sonny Bono is in the first movie. Sonny Bono. I don't know how you say his last name, but I didn't realize that the creepy upstairs neighbor was, him. Until I read a review that was like, yeah, Sonny dies way too early in this movie. He was like the reason I saw this movie, and he just died. And I was like, oh, that's Sonny Bono of Sonny and Cher.
So does that mean we're getting right into the casting? Because there is some There's some background. I skimmed
Well,
the documentary.
we also skipped how many times we've watched these, and I haven't
0.
watched them
None.
ever.
And hopefully we'll never watch them again.
Hopefully. Well, so I saw this documentary and I listened to the first 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, I listened to the
first
first 10 minutes.
five 10 minutes were super boring, which is why I turned it off, because he was just like, an Empire wasn't really sure if we were going to release it. I was like, oh my God, get to the interesting stuff.
All of the people on the video were talking just in the most flat, uninterested
monotone
voices possible, which is interesting because they actually seem pretty passionate about Troll. I mean, if you get down to like what they were actually saying, but just the way they said it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, Troll comes out of this time when, like, these movies are pretty big. You know, there's never any story.
B horror.
Well, not even horror, because the first one's more fantasy than horror.
It's urban fantasy, and I see a lot more people being like, yeah, I don't know what was marketed as a horror movie when it's more of an urban fantasy movie.
Yeah. And you think about other movies that were coming out in the same vein. You know, you have Legend of the Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Neverending Story.
Yeah.
And probably a bunch of other ones, too, that I don't know
That
about.
whole segment of 80s cinema.
Yeah.
Princess Bride, even, although that was in the 90s, I think.
Yeah, Princess Bride fits into this, I think.
I mean, I think it fits. I'm just trying to remember if that was
Early 90s. I think it's early 90s, but I think it's still within this era of stuff.
Except that's an actually good movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I kind of wish this style would come back. Oh, I know it won't.
It won't, because it's apparently impossible to do well, just given the fate of this movie and like the never-ending sequels.
None of these movies are actually like good.
I mean, I haven't seen Labyrinth. A lot of people really love Labyrinth, but I feel like that's also like a cult following kind of thing.
I've seen it twice, because I first watched it and was like, this is pretty bad. But I watched it again thinking like, all right, people are clearly seeing something in this that I'm not, and I didn't like it the second time either. But I guess when I say that, I mean I wish like sort of lighthearted, with dark moments for sure, because there are dark moments in all these movies. But I wish this sort of like lighthearted, sort of maybe kid or like tween oriented fantasy would come back. In terms of movies, still, yeah.
I probably never watch them because I kind of hate seeing kids in movies because they're almost always insufferable little dolts.
Well, they don't have to. I mean, something kid oriented doesn't have to have kids as the main characters, like Princess Bride, right?
Right. But
which
like,
Princess Bride skews a little older, but still, it's kid friendly.
But this genre tends to have those kind of things. There is actually a movie coming out next year that I think does fit in this vein called The Kid Who Would Be King.
Yeah, I've seen a trailer for that. And yeah, I think it fits.
Looks also like the kids are going to be insufferable little... But Patrick Stewart's in it, so it might be okay.
No, I mean, I thought it looked all right. I didn't think the child actors, based on the one trailer I saw, were going to be too grating. But that's the thing, you know, when you do something like this, you either have to get real good child actors, which is difficult, or just have
the other thing is you cut the trailers to put in the non-grating moments in the trailers.
Yeah, that's true.
But so
that's true of every movie.
I also found out, I guess this is kind of related to overall production, that at some point a couple of years ago, the director was like, we're revitalizing Troll for a new era as a 3D animated movie. This was actually very recently, like 3 years ago.
Yeah, apparently this is all still in the works. I mean, I didn't find any I didn't find any information that was recent about it, but I also didn't find out anything about like them canceling it or anything like that.
Yeah, it like just fell off the map, I think.
Yeah.
I found like one article that was like, Troll's coming back, boys. And the article was basically...
Get your popcorn, get your corn, get your green frosting ready.
That's Troll 2, though. The article was basically like 5 paragraphs of why is this a thing? Did we all really love that movie from 1986, Troll, that much?
I mean, people love Troll. I'm not one of them. I like it. I don't love it.
You know, to each their own, really. To each their own.
So casting for this, like we mentioned, has Sonny Bono, has Atreyu. I mean, this kid was set to be like the #1 child actor in fantasy movies.
I think he dropped off the map after this.
Yeah, I remember when we watched Neverending Story, there was that article we linked to that was like, where are Neverending Story child actors now? And they're all just like doing something else. Like the kid who played Bastion is into like, I forgot, it was something weird like tarot
Smoking
reading or
dope.
something. Yeah. Tea leaf reading or something. smoking the drugs, as they say in the second one.
Smoking the dope.
I found out why. I found out why the dialogue in the second one was so stilted. But
Yeah,
we'll
me
get there.
too.
We'll get there. Because dialogue in the first one wasn't as stilted.
Because they're unrelated movies. We need to get this out of the way here. They're unrelated, like completely unrelated.
Yeah, they were
nothing ties them together.
They were renamed. In the case of Troll 3, retroactively renamed to capitalize on the success of Troll.
And I don't know if the director of Troll 2 is just taking the piss at this point, or if he's just like the biggest troll in the universe, but he's written a movie called Goblins 2 that features no goblins and has trolls in it. And I don't know if he's just a freaking god-tier level troll. It's even
Trolling before
it's
the
even
internet.
got George what's his name from Troll 2 reprising his role, making it a spin-off of freaking Troll 2.
Guess we know what the point 5 is going to be. Possibly.
Don't think that movie's out yet.
Damn. Waited. We shouldn't have done Troll.
That's
for
going to be
now.
one of those movies where the director tries to recapture the magic and completely just bombs, right?
What if it's like an actual like great movie, like one of the best movies ever made?
Like that movie Heaven's Gate, which is like 4 hours long, and people who watched the original cut back when it aired were like, when it came out, were like, this is by far the worst movie I have ever seen. But then the director was like, I didn't get a say in that, and released his own cut, and everyone's like, this is the greatest movie ever made.
Well, you know, I watched It's a Wonderful Life recently, and I knew, you know what that movie's about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the premise of like him, the angel, and trying to get his wings, and him revisiting a world where he never existed. But I didn't know that came like 20 minutes into the end of like a 3.5 hour movie. I thought that was the entire movie. But it turns out 3 hours of it is just like his life. And then the part everyone remembers comes right at the end. They just throw fantasy in there right at the end.
I mean, there are some movies that can be good that are long. Lord of the Rings is, I think, movies that are good because they're long.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was sitting there watching like, all right, when is the angel going to show up? Like an hour and a half in. It's like, what is this?
Avengers Endgame is going to apparently be the longest Marvel movie they've ever released, which is impressive since I think Infinity War is like 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I've seen a trailer for it, and it looks like garbage. Like most
Well,
superhero
brace
movies.
yourself for our next trilogy 2 months from now.
I'm predicting that the first one is going to be pretty good, actually, for a superhero movie.
Well, so
This trilogy doesn't break the trend of the first one being the best in any way.
we've had trilogies where the first isn't the best,
No,
though.
but most of them are, you know, the first is the best.
I guess, yeah. So, I mean,
Kung Fu Panda 2 really gave 1 a run for its money.
I think
really
2
did.
is better than 1. but-
Yeah, I mean, they really did a
and
good
3 was
Three
just...
is no. But like
3 was no.
No, but like I don't know, 2 that's why Kung Fu Panda 2 was so, not only because it was a good movie itself, but like you can tell we really don't want to talk about trolls, but because it didn't
was I
rest on
gonna
its
say?
laurels. Like it was such a good follow-up to 1.
You can tell how little we have about Troll because we're talking about literally every other movie trilogy except Troll. Why did we watch these?
Maybe we should explain that. We just picked it off a list. We're like, well, nothing's coming out in
We can
January.
capitalize on, yeah.
So we just scrolled through a list of trilogies on Wikipedia, and I was like, hey, what's Troll? So other people who were in Troll 1, Michael Moriarty plays
Yeah.
Harry Potter Sr. That's something we can also get into, is the Harry Potter connection, but at the end.
The Harry Potter connection.
No, well, I mean, okay, there's stuff to say about that. And is Michael Moriarty a big name? Not big, but like, is he like a B tier?
He's like one of those B-list actors, yeah. He's in all those B-list movies.
Yeah. Because I think I'd heard his name before.
Me too. But, I don't know. Oh, and Julia Louis, I think it's pronounced Louis Dreyfus. Although I don't actually know.
Dreyfus?
Dreyfus. I don't know if it's Louis or Louis, though, but she's in this movie as well. Elaine from Seinfeld. Although she's done, like, much more prolific things than that, but that's, like, where everybody would
Seinfeld
know
is
her
pretty
from.
prolific.
Yeah, but she's also, like, in Veep now, and she's done a whole lot of other things that... Yeah, anyway, most people would know her from Seinfeld. And that's where I knew Newman from. I don't know the actor's name now. in Jurassic Park. He played Nedry.
That was like 3 years ago.
3 years is like 3 days.
3 days is like 3 decades.
Oh, God. So, yeah, the cast in the first movie was actually made up of actors who were, well, actors.
Yeah. Yeah, the acting in the first one isn't good. But it's not
bad.
It's not. No, it's like
It's just
like
possible.
Not, yeah.
It's serviceable to the story being told, I think.
Yeah. It's not like Troll 2 levels of... I mean, it's not distracting to the levels of, like, Troll 2.
Right.
Is the thing.
Yeah. And,
And the movie came out, and it wasn't that successful. It wasn't that successful.
Yeah, it had
ratings-wise.
A decently sized budget for the time. I think the budget was about $1 million.
I mean, the animatronics in the movie and the puppets and all the troll stuff, I thought were amazing.
Yeah, they looked really good.
I thought they were better than Neverending Story. I thought they were even better than like Labyrinth and some Jim Henson stuff.
Yeah, the
amazing.
Puppets and the troll outfit were really, really good.
Yeah.
The monster at the end leaves a little to be desired, but
still, even that doesn't ruin it all for me. I mean, I really liked the creatures in the first one. Mm-hmm. This is something, if I watched this as a kid, I probably would have been scared out of my wits. But like, I would have really liked this movie if I'd seen it as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is something that I would have gone back and watched like again and again, I think.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have, considering when I was 5 years old, I watched the first 5 minutes of E.T. and turned it off because I was scared. So, yeah, not my proudest moment. Not my proudest moment.
I mean, you were 5. Like, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? But yeah, I mean, visually, this was pretty good.
Yeah, visually. Set-wise, it looks really good. Like, they put a lot of money into the sets, save for the Harry Potter.
In terms of cinematography, maybe not so great, but like, it's... Troll 2 had it worse in that department as well, so
maybe we should just get to it. Because the
bulk of what this is going to be is taking jabs at Troll 2, but we can also just describe briefly how Troll 1 gained a cult following, and is still beloved to this day. Yeah, I can see why. I'm not part of that cult following, but I understand.
I mean, I understand. It's like not a bad movie. It's just all right, I think.
And this is some, like, if you watch this as a kid, like, this is, I don't know, like, do you agree? Like, this would have been awesome. Like, as a kid, it's this kid, he moves into a new house. There's all these creatures and like there's fighting and action and there's a bunch of stupid like
I feel like maybe humor. The ending might have gone over your head as a kid, but
the ending gets like pretty thematically interesting when you think about it.
The ending gets weird because Turog kills his own beast because it's threatening the sister. And
the ending gets pretty whack, but like
I really feel like that would go over your head as a kid, but I don't think you'd care if you're a kid, so it doesn't really matter.
I think endings that are really interesting to look at on like a more thematic level, or you're gonna get that whether you're actually articulating it and thinking about it or not. Because like even as a kid, you can appreciate that kind of stuff.
Right. I mean, I think as a kid maybe you would enjoy it more than as an adult. Watching it like as a young adult, I guess, is what I'd classify us as now. I was just kind of whelmed by the movie.
Whelmed.
I was just whelmed.
Yeah, I really do think that if I'd watched this as a little kid, I would have loved it. But hey. Troll 2, on the other hand.
Now, Troll 2, this is where things hold on to your butts. Or as Willy Wonka says, now things go wrong. Troll 2 is a completely unrelated movie titled Goblins.
That they decided to rename Troll 2 to capitalize on Troll.
Freaking American distributors were the ones who were like, look, it's not going to make a lot of money as an indie movie titled Goblins. He's like, well, we'll call it Troll 2 then.
Now, I think I read conflicting information about this, but I could be wrong, but this was direct to video, wasn't it? I think it was. I think that's what I read.
I don't remember.
Because I read a couple articles on Troll 2, and I know one of them had, I think one of the actors, who really, if you look back, the actors are the ones who've been most vocal about Troll 2. Because they got the shortest end of the stick on all of this. But I think one of them, and I'll try to find the article and link it at this timestamp in the show notes, even though I normally just put them all at the end. I think one of the actors has said, where was I going with this? I completely forgot what I was trying to say. Oh, it said that it was direct-to-video.
I think it was direct-to-video.
It would make sense. I don't know if any movie theaters would like want to play this movie.
Movie theaters are playing Holmes and Watson, which is considered.
I want to see that. It looks
5%
funny.
Rotten
It looks
Tomatoes
funny.
rating.
Looks funny. Looks good. Plus, you got to support Will Ferrell since whatever. I'm not going to go into that. Why we have to support Will Ferrell?
Let's not go
Let's
into
not.
that. But
And we don't have to support him.
yeah, Troll 2. Let's talk about the casting process for this movie.
Okay, so this is an Italian production.
Right.
Italian-American co-production in the sense that the actors
But not
are
like
American.
a Sergio Leone quality
No,
Italian
no, no,
production.
no.
It's a genre film called an exploitation film.
No, but also like not in the sense of a Sergio Leone movie where there were Americans also on the crew. This is I think primarily, if not wholly, Italian crew.
Yeah, I read
and
that there was
American actors.
one guy on the crew who spoke fluent English.
Yeah. I think it was a woman, actually, if I'm remembering correctly, but I don't remember.
I'm just using guy as a gender neutral term. Checkmate.
Linguists.
The casting for this, I read an interview with Michael Stephenson and I think his name is George Hardy. They did this interview as part of their media tour for their documentary Best Worst Movie.
George Hardy is the kid who played Joshua?
No, George Hardy's the guy who played the dad in the same movie.
Okay.
The dad, and Michael Stephenson played Joshua.
Oh, okay.
George Hardy played Michael. And so Michael Stephenson talked about how he wanted to be an actor, and
It's a late life career switch.
well, Michael Stephenson played the kid, right? The teenage kid.
Yeah. I don't know why I keep thinking it's
And
the
he
other way
wanted to, well, because the dad's name is Michael as well, which is extremely confusing. But Michael Stephenson wanted to be an actor, and he went to, so this was filmed in Utah.
Right.
So he went, he found out about the audition or the open casting call for this movie by overhearing someone's agent
telling them not to go.
in the lobby of like the school he was going to.
And he's an elementary school kid at this point.
And
I believe.
Well, I think he
Middle
was
school.
like high school aged, I think.
Really?
Middle school.
He looks very he's like a Frankie Muniz type then, looks very young.
And he bribed his friend with gas money and soda to drive him to the open casting call.
The kid who played Joshua was in high school. That is extremely surprising.
That's what he said in the interview. So
I don't know if I believe that.
that's what he
Because
said.
he looks like he's just 7 years old.
Unless it was misattributed in the interview, which is possible that it was actually George Hardy saying that. Because it was just an interview with Michael Stephenson and George Hardy, and it's entirely possible that they misattributed it. Because this website had a couple of formatting errors too, where they forgot to bold the questions. So it's entirely possible that it was actually George Hardy who said that. But it was in the interview, and I felt it was a humorous enough story to relate. George Hardy was a dentist when this movie was being made. And apparently during the making of Best Worst Movie, the documentary, the lady who played the witch required some dental work, and George Hardy was like, I'll give you some dental work.
Cadence, or whatever her name is.
So he was like, I'll do some dental work for you.
What? Who's that guy on The Walking Dead who's like also low-key a doctor? You know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
right? It's like one of the actors on The Walking Dead is also a doctor.
Damn, I don't know. And you know what? I actually do think Michael Stephenson was in high school or college when he was cast in this movie, because he talked then about how the movie was released when he was on his mission because he's Mormon.
That's insane. He went through puberty like very late.
because he was on his mission when this movie was released, and he went on this whole thing. He's like, we were told the movie wasn't going to be released in the United States. And then
lo and behold, walking to Walmart and Troll 2 sitting on the shelves.
he was like, I tried to go buy a copy from like the local video store, but they were sold out, thankfully. And then he was like, when I finally watched it, I just sat there with my mouth open.
Maybe he was in high school by the time he figured out that the movie came out. Because I have a very hard time
Maybe.
believing that this kid was over like 9.
I'll
or
link the
10.
interview. You can
Yeah.
decide.
Maybe I'll just contact him. I mean, he seems pretty open about Troll 2.
Maybe our next episode could just be an interview with Michael Stephenson.
True. So there were a couple other interesting casting stories for Troll 2. Like how some of the extras were just people around town. And like how the guy who owned the shop was a patient from a nearby mental hospital who has gone on record as saying he was high out of his mind during all this entire process.
And doesn't remember filming any of it.
Had no idea what was going on. And has also gone on record as saying that he wasn't acting when he delivered the lines. Never thought we'd discuss a movie where we can go behind the scenes and say that someone on set wasn't acting. But here we are.
I remember texting you that he was a patient at a mental hospital right after we finished the movie, and you were just like, wait, what?
See,
the guy's like trying to convince Michael Stephenson's Joshua. Trying to convince one of the other guys to drink the milk.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. When we watched Troll 2, or when we got to Troll 3, we were like, man, this is just going to be a generic, like, not very good movie. Because after Troll 2, just nothing can top that insane, just mess. And this is the thing with describing the making of as well, right? Is that Troll 2 has such, like, insane things that would never happen on, like, any other movie set, things going on behind the scenes. But, like, once we get to Troll 3, it's just going to be very devoid
there's nothing for Troll 3 anyway.
For Troll 3. There is nothing for it.
Part of the reason why the dialogue sucks in Troll 2 is because it was written
In Italian.
by people who spoke Italian.
It was written... I was confused about this. Was it written in Italian and translated, or was it written in broken...
See, I was confused about this too. I wasn't sure if the people wrote it in like broken English or if they wrote it in Italian and someone translated it.
I'm inclined to believe it's the latter of those two. Because
too.
It doesn't sound too broken. Like, most of the lines sound all right.
What I am sure about is that the actors were like, we tried to clean up some of the lines, but the director insisted on us saying it as it was written.
Right. That's where we get stuff like, they have laid out the food for us, or whatever the mom said.
That's also where we get questionable decisions like Joshua peeing on the food.
No, but that's not even a dialogue thing.
The dialogue that's like just following ways like, I'm gonna tighten my belt so I don't have to feel hunger pains. And just you remember, I have more experience than you. And it's like, what?
Okay, but here's the thing about the decisions they make in this movie is it doesn't matter whether you speak English, Italian, or whatever language. You know, peeing on the food is not a decision you would come to.
Throughout Troll 2, they appraise every situation with a rational mind and then consistently choose the worst course of action to take.
Remember the sister was like, it's not like we can have a seance right here, right now.
And Joshua was like, wait!
You're a genius, sis.
There's also the guy who clearly has seen some shit when he went into this movie.
Aaron. There's one character who gets turned into a tree, watches people die right in front of him, and then gets chainsawed to death, just doesn't react to any of the stuff that he goes through.
He has the most straight face out of any actor in this movie.
And you would think, you know, when his buddy's coming to rescue him and rips off the bark growing on his face, you would think he would scream or react in some way, but he's just like, all right, man, get me out of here. I'm sick and tired of this nonsense.
Apparently the witch was told to play it that over the top by the director.
I read a blog post actually about Troll 2 And the person actually hadn't watched Troll 2, but they were for some reason writing a post about it. And they said that the only movies they'd seen from the director were, two other movies, and that they were appalled to find out, or not appalled, but just shocked to find out that this director is, I'm paraphrasing, but this is mostly in their words, just incapable of making a competent movie.
George Hardy apparently has no Troll 2 paraphernalia in his dentist office.
Darn.
Although you can buy best worst movie at his office.
That's the thing, is after Troll 2, 20 years later, Michael Stevenson, George Hardy, I think a couple other people.
Well, they were the two who were the ones really putting the documentary together. And apparently it's critically acclaimed. It's apparently a really good documentary.
We could watch that actually for the 0.5.
We could.
We'll have to decide.
We'll have to figure it out.
20 minutes.
Yeah. You think you have 20 more minutes of stuff to say on these movies?
Maybe. So Troll 2 came out, and I guess it was direct to video.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing. This is where I say we could have done a little bit more homework. Because we could have really dug deep and found out, but we didn't. Because Troll isn't interesting enough a franchise to do so.
Troll 3 was definitely direct-to-video, although Troll 3 I know was lined up for an American release initially, but then it fell through and then it went direct-to-video.
Maybe, I mean, I'm just speculating, but could have gotten a release in Italy in theaters, as could have Troll 2 done, whatever that means.
Sounds like you ripped that line straight out of the Troll 2 script.
I mean,
Troll 2 ends on a massive cliffhanger too that never gets resolved.
Well, Troll 2 and Troll 3 are more classic horror where it's all right, they're going to die at the end. But we should also just quickly mention that we're not totally blaming the stilted script on there's poor acting in Troll 2 and to an extent 3 as well, regardless of the script, right? These are just bad actors regardless.
Yeah, but the director wouldn't let them clean up the dialogue when they spoke, so...
But I have a hard time believing that if they had made all the changes the actor suggested, the mom or the daughter or the boyfriend would have been good in any sense.
Like how the boyfriend eventually just ditches his friend. He's like, well, what am I going to do? Apparently the guy who filmed that scene where she was trying to seduce him was tacitly neglected to mention to his parents that he was in this movie.
Yeah, I read that this guy was he was just a local high school or whatever and just trying to make some money or something. I don't know. That is the best scene in the movie, though, where there's just inexplicable corn. But anyway, we should just move on to Troll 3.
Well, what is there to say about Troll 3?
Well, there's basically... I mean, all right, let me just preface this.
We must be one of the 5 people in the world who've even watched this damn movie.
Let me just preface this with something from the movie, because there's really nothing to say behind the scenes. Is that when we came out of Troll 2, I found it hard to believe that going into the next movie, they could create a worse villain than the goblins from Troll 2.
Vegetarian goblins.
But then we got the vines from Troll 3.
I like how you're talking like these are made by the same people.
I know. But they're not. They're not.
Also, Troll 3, the cover of the Creepers, I think, has a picture of a scantily clad woman being engrossed by vines. This scene never happens in the movie.
Is that woman in the movie?
No, this scene never happens in the movie.
Oh shoot, nobody's gonna watch this. Quick, put a naked woman on the cover.
The scene is never in the movie.
No.
So, nice.
Yeah, there's nothing for this movie.
Yeah.
There is actually nothing for it.
It could have just dropped out of the sky. And...
the director is an Italian director who's directed other probably shoddy movies.
One of which we were considering watching for the 0.5.
Right, there's actually another movie called Troll 3.
Which is even less related to the franchise.
Yeah, so this one was...
Which I don't even think is a horror movie. I think it's just straight fantasy.
No, it's fantasy, and it's part of another franchise.
The Ator franchise. We watched 30 seconds of it, and it was suitably bad.
So Troll 3 was retroactive. This isn't a Goblin situation where it was named Troll 2 to capitalize. This was retroactively named Troll 3. This movie has 3 other names. Contamination Point 7, The Crawlers, and Creepers.
Creepers, yeah.
And after it came out, they decided to call it Troll 3 to capitalize on the cult following of Troll.
Success? Question mark?
And that's the thing, like, Troll 1 came out in 86. These other ones came out in, like, the early 90s. Was Troll even that big of a movie to be able to capitalize on the success of On? Whatever that... I think Troll 2 has contaminated my speech. But, I don't know. I question the decision to call either of these movies Troll.
Right. You know...
Especially, like, the word goblin is a huge part of Troll 2. Like, the town is called Nilbog.
How do you not realize it's goblin backwards?
Did you realize? I didn't realize it.
Until he looked in the mirror and was like, it's goblin backwards. Yeah, a lot of people in the production of Troll 2, sorry for going back, were Mormon. Just wanted to point that out because it was filmed in Utah. So, like, a lot of the actors were Mormon.
Yeah.
There's a whole tangent in the interview I read where I don't remember if it was George Hardy and Michael Stephenson, but they go on this whole thing. They're like, you know, we always talk about Mormonism. Everyone has this picture where it's like you got 10 wives, but no, that's not what Mormonism is. I'm like, how is this even related to Troll 2?
Propaganda in the Troll documentary.
So, yeah, Troll 3.
I have literally nothing else to say about it.
It was like so impressively a non-event that it's almost notable for that fact.
So how did these work as a trilogy?
Really poorly.
I think this is the fastest we've ever gotten to this section.
No, actually, surprisingly not.
What Neverending Story was faster? Or
yeah.
The Neverending Story was just me talking about how much I hated the trilogy, but you know, here's the thing, I can't believe I'm defending this, but I can see some links between 1 and 2. And that's because Troll 1 is actually really interesting because you look back at like the history of fantasy literature. Not that I consider movies literature, but I consider literature a component of movies, as we've described multiple times.
Right.
You look back at the history of fantasy stories, I guess, and the concept of like a threshold of like where a fantasy world starts and ends, and who crosses that line, when they cross that line, the circumstances of it, and how that's all done is really important. And this movie actually really heavily touches on that. Maybe if you're looking for this, maybe in a heavy-handed way, of like, because you remember at the end there's like this doorway, and right beyond it there's a fantasy realm, and like the kids can cross it and the adults can't, and like that's why I relate this to Neverending Story, because it's almost about like who can go into fantasy worlds, like how children have access to it, but there's also like a responsibility necessary to that. So it's also about escapism. And I haven't put together like a theory about any of this or anything, but I just want to point out that these things are there in the movie.
I mean, I think in the first one, it's not so much that the adults can't go into the fantasy world. I think they just choose not to.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
They see it through the door.
Yeah.
Harry Potter Sr. is like, well, no thanks. In one of the reviews I read, they were like, well, the most inconsequential scene in movie history is in this movie, and it's a scene where Harry Potter Sr. just dances to a freaking record for 5 minutes.
I don't think that's inconsequential, because that's a moment where an adult in the movie, Harry Potter Sr., is practicing escapism, but not in a fantasy sense.
Right.
And again, like, I don't have anywhere I'm going with any of these things I'm pointing out. I just want to, because I don't think the movie is good enough to like really examine. But like I do think that scene is related to what's going on in the movie. Mm-hmm. I think people are giving Troll 1 the short end of the stick when there's actually some interesting.
The long end of the stick.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think there's interesting things going on in Troll 1, especially with like the witch, and there's that scene where the kid is like, you're just like a kid, everything in your house is what kids would have, which it's not. It's like freaking suits of armor and like maces and swords.
Paintings.
It's not, but like you also think, all right, she's related to this fantasy world, this escapist world, but that also that this fantasy world that's encroaching on our world, and it actually has real consequences. And it's all written down in a book.
There are a lot of things brought up in the first movie that I like not really explained. Like, she references the fact that Turok, or whatever the heck his name was.
Turok. No, it's not Turok.
Turok is a video game.
Yeah, I think it is Turok, isn't it?
Might be. Anyway, she's referencing like how the bond, the boundary between the two worlds is weakest right now in this specific
Right.
location, but she doesn't explain why
No, but
right
like
now.
it's all. I mean,
or-
she doesn't have to. It's all really interesting to put
why
these things together.
here in this freaking random apartment building in San Francisco.
I mean, Beijing.
No, San Francisco.
You know about those replica cities in China, right?
Yeah. This was San Francisco, though.
We can't be 100% sure about that.
We're pretty sure.
Plus, the Golden Gate Bridge was just
This is
painted
the
backdrop.
whitest city in Beijing. The whitest district of Beijing, I guess.
Well, it's in China somewhere. Sure of it.
You know, all three of them work in a trilogy in that they all three end on a big cliffhanger that implies a sequel that never happened. First one, we get the cop who sees Turog, the fantasy world in the basement. And second one, the mom gets turned into food. And in the third one, the vines are revealed to still be alive. So,
The second two are more classic, like horror, like, oh shoot, you're all gonna die now. But the reason why I see this sort of link between the first and second one is the second one, to a very minimal and poorly done extent, also does touch on like this thing of who has responsibility, who practices escapism when confronted with like this fantasy stuff, and how adults versus kids plays into all that. Because there's Grandpa Seth, and he's related to like, well, no, I mean, you think of like the person at the beginning of life and the end of life, literally, because Grandpa Seth is dead.
Grandpa Seth's character busts out the window with an axe.
But like Joshua and Grandpa Seth are at the beginning and end of life, respectively, and they're the ones who are keyed into the fantasy stuff that's going on.
Yeah, the dad picks up on it.
They'll eventually all pick up on it, yeah, but they're pretty much forced to pick up on it. But yeah, it's interesting. I think there is stuff going on here that hasn't necessarily been examined on a large scale, if any scale.
Right.
I don't want to completely write it off. And I might be giving the Troll trilogy too much credit, but I don't want to completely write off these things that I think are interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fair. I just never want to come back to these movies again.
Me neither. Me neither.
The third one,
I take that back. I would watch one again. Much later, years from now, I would watch it again.
maybe.
The third one is like an ecological, environmental type thing, which just insane. It's just crazy.
I want to mention briefly here the third one, how it seems for the entire movie, the whole like thing about the movie is like ecology and like you got to save the environment.
Right,
and don't
because the
dump
reason
your,
why
yeah.
the vines came to life and are attacking people is because they're dumping nuclear waste in the forest and killing the forest. I mean, at the end,
movie. Okay, wait. I'm gonna give Troll 3 credit for having the greatest bait and switch I've ever seen in a movie, because the whole movie you're like, all right, so the movie's about don't dump your radioactive waste, because then they're like, well, we can fix it by just cleaning up the waste.
It seems like a very simple sort of parable for the whole thing.
Yeah, and then the resolution of the plot is actually this guy just drives in.
They're all dying. The vines are killing everyone.
The vines are killing everyone while they try to clean up the radioactive waste, and this guy just comes riding in. And when I imagine this in my head, I kind of wish like Flight of the Valkyries was playing, because he comes riding in on these bulldozers and just starts bulldozing the entire forest. That's
no vines if there's no forest.
And it's like the resolution is the message isn't don't dump your nuclear waste in the forest. It's bulldoze the frickin' forest and turn it into a nuclear waste site before you dump your nuclear waste.
I mean, there is that like switch at the end where the vines are still alive and they still found a way to live and they're coming back to kill you, but like still, you know, it's.
But
it's
there's this glorious moment where you just see the trees start to fall down. You're like, wait, what's happening? And this like row of bulldozers just comes over the hill, and it's like, what is even happening?
Yeah, that's the thing about this scene, is that like normally I wouldn't nitpick something like this. But this is horror, so the deaths are very important, and like the inescapability of their deaths, like, because that's the thing with horror, is like one of the big scary things in a lot of horror movies and books is like, you know, they're all going to die no matter what happens, no matter what they do. They're going to be forced into a situation where they're either going to die or they're going to have to make some extremely tough decision that results in someone's death or whatever. But this scene at the end is like, why did they all have to die? If this guy had just gotten here a few minutes earlier,
And then his explanation, they're like, well, why did you come back? Because he had previously left because he didn't want to help. He's like, well, I remembered what you said about helping, and I realized I could help too. And I'm like, what?
And like, how did he find out where the site was? And again, normally I don't nitpick little plot things like this, but like, seriously, man, like, how did he find out where the site was? They spent hours finding out where this site was, and
they had to use a helicopter as well.
Yep.
Maybe because he just bulldozed through the forest until he found them.
Forest.
It was quite possibly the most glorious way to end this trilogy.
Yeah, it was. You got to give him credit for being able to do something as outrageous as that. Are there any other movies we've watched where the second one was like noticeably more low budget than the third one?
I don't think so.
Me neither. This is definitely one, though. I mean,
this is definitely
one of those bulldozer rentals probably cost more than the entire prop budget of Troll 2.
Oh, the trolls, the goblins in Troll 2 looked so bad. We knew we were in for a ride when Grandpa Seth was telling the story at the beginning, and it's got this guy running through a forest chased by these really crappy goblins, and this girl who seduces him and tries to feed him this green
frosting.
food, which is
it's green frosting.
Well, this isn't even frosting at this point. It's like this cornstarch and water concoction that's like solid but not really solid. He's just like bleeding from the middle of his head.
If I remember correctly, that intro scene for Troll 2 doesn't have any names or credits on it, as if the people making the movie wanted to be dissociated from it as much as possible.
Do you blame them?
No, not at all.
Because I don't.
Considering they've retroactively gone back and said they never would have done it if they'd known. Or they didn't say they never would have done it. They just said they had no idea it was coming out in the U.S. But you gotta wonder, like, if that was the plan all along, why did they do the entire thing in English?
Yeah, that's right? a good point. Actually, that's a good point. As a closing anecdote, George Hardy apparently continued to perform dental work while he was acting in Troll 2. He would, like, work in the office and then take some days off to act and then go back to the office and, yeah.
Good for him.
There you go. There you go.
I'm sure his acting career didn't work out, so I'm glad he had.
Well, he's going to be in Goblins too.
Yeah.
Well, he said that people like specifically come to his dental practice because of this cult following in Troll 2, and they like want to meet him and like.
I would go there.
Dental work.
Yeah, I'd go.
So that's kind of weird, but. Anyway, yeah, you know, I really have nothing else to say about it.
Is there anything else for Troll? I don't think there is, considering this isn't even a franchise. It's just 3 unrelated movies brought together under one umbrella name.
Yep, there's just best worst movie.
By circumstance.
So.
Yep. That's it.
And that's it. We didn't talk about the Harry Potter connection.
Some people say J.K. Rowling was heavily inspired by Troll 1, and I can see some connections there, especially because of the name Harry Potter.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. There was like a thing when it was going to become that animated movie because it was going to be called Troll, the revitalization of Harry Potter or something like that. And there was like some rights kerfuffle and people were like, we're copying Harry Potter. And it's like, no, we were first actually.
Well, here's the thing. Whether or not, I mean, J.K. Rowling herself has denied even like knowing about the movie, I think. But here's the thing. Whether she took inspiration from it or not, she won.
Yeah, she did. She did. Anyway, you can email us at thedoctor@decorative.com. Questions, comments, concerns, ignorance, love letters, your thoughts on trolls, and goblins, and whatever the hell.
Vines.
Vines. Third one doesn't even have any freaking trolls in it.
It should have been called Troll, Goblin, and Vine.
You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Triple Play. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook. Trust your doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And
also, the next trilogy we're watching,
right, is Iron Man. So that's going to be March and April. We'll be doing Iron Man related things.
Yeah.
But next month, so February, we're going to be watching Best Worst Movie, which is the documentary made by Michael Stevenson and George Hardy that we've touched on a few times in this episode. And seeing if we can sort of fill in the gaps for how this was made and stuff like that. But until then, the end.